Let me express my heartfelt appreciation for the honor of being able to speak with each of you today. My name is Paul Michael Kurtz. I am a father to two beautiful girls, a husband, a business leader, a nonprofit board member, an accidental activist, a Christian, and a proud Democrat in the state of Ohio. I was born in Sandusky. I grew up in a mobile home in a trailer park right next to the Sandusky Bay and, in every sense of the phrase, on the other side of the tracks. I was shaped by the humility and hard work of my parents, my mother, a music teacher, my father, a county police officer. It was there I first learned that dignity does not come from wealth or privilege. It comes from service, from sacrifice, and from community. Like so many working Ohio families, mine was tested. When my mother became sick, when I was in high school, we faced medical bills that threatened to bankrupt us. It was my first lesson in how our broken healthcare system fails working people, and something we don't talk about enough. There is a dark side to not having money, where relationships with family and friends suffer or are broken. I remember tearing up when I got my first job out of college, only to find out that I would have to work 2 jobs just to survive, to pay down student loans, to pay my rent, to eat. I lived paycheck to paycheck. For nearly 2 decades, I've worked in business, working my way up through a publicly traded company, leading teams through recessions, trade wars, and even a global pandemic. I have seen how bad policy can mean thousands of layoffs, wrecking people's lives. How entire communities can be destroyed when the powerful play games. For the past 5 years, I've served on the board of a nonprofit dedicated to helping the most underfunded schools in our country. And I've seen what it really means. Teachers digging into their own pockets to buy supplies. Children trying to learn without basic tools. And communities forced to do more with less. I lead with empathy because I have lived what so many Ohioans live. My wife and my daughters are my daily reminder of what is at stake. Their future. But it cannot only be about my family. It's about every Ohio kid. Every family, every neighbor, every community, no matter who you are, no matter what you believe, no matter what you look like, because it should not have to happen to you for it to matter to you. And so it's time to turn the page and say enough is enough, because we believe no one should have to work 3 or 4 jobs just to survive. And we refuse to accept that getting by must come at the cost of exhaustion and anxiety. We believe every parent should have access to childcare that is available and affordable. We believe healthcare is a human right, that no one should get sick and be driven into crippling debt simply for seeking care. We believe that all children, no matter their zip code, should have access to a quality education, and teachers deserve more recognition and pay. We believe in a state where corruption is driven out from our politics and money no longer buys power, where elections are decided by the people, not billionaires and politicians, where we stop funding wars that bomb children and families abroad and instead use those resources to heal our own people, rebuild our towns, and provide health care here at home. Ohioans are ready to turn the page on years of corruption and incompetence in Columbus. Ohioans are ready for a new generation of leadership that puts working people first, that puts our people first. There is change coming. You can feel it in the air. It is a belief, and a belief turns into courage, and courage is contagious. But the journey is not going to be easy. We are at a moment of crisis for for our country and our great state. We have a corrupt and broken Ohio. Ohio now ranks among the worst states in the country for healthcare, infrastructure, opportunity, employment, environment, education, and crime. We have a devastating affordability problem, while our poverty rates remain extremely high. Small towns and urban cities alike are being impacted by these disastrous policies that has led to an economy rigged against the very workers who built it, a healthcare system that bankrupts families for getting sick, an education system that has abandoned our children instead of preparing them for the future, a childcare system so expensive and so scarce that parents are forced to choose between their paycheck and their children, a housing market where rents have doubled and families can't afford a place to live, a cost of living so high that even those working 2 or 3 jobs can't get ahead, all while we fund wars and bomb cities and towns across the globe instead of helping our people here at home. This corruption, greed, and unchecked power has destroyed relationships with one another. Families against families, neighbors against neighbors, under the weight of lies designed to divide us. This didn't happen just by accident. It was built this way. But this is not about one man or one party. It's about a system designed to protect the powerful. This system was built by the billionaires who control our media. They control our corporations. They control what you see on your TVs. They control what your social media algorithms show you. And they also control our politicians. They only aim to exploit fears, anger, and frustrations by dividing us by race, by religion, by birthplace, by gender, while they enrich themselves. But the 99% are stronger than the 1%, no matter how much wealth they have. We were never meant to fight each other. We were meant to fight for each other. And they fear that. They fear that because they live in a place of privilege. And when you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. But this corruption and greed has infiltrated our politics, both in Columbus and among our representatives in D.C. And we are living through those consequences now. Working families in Ohio have been decimated. More than 1.4 million of our neighbors, including 1 in 6 of our children, live below the poverty line. Nearly 4 in 10 Ohio households are one crisis away from financial collapse. They're either under the poverty line or too poor to afford the basics. This has created an extreme income and wealth inequality crisis in Ohio. In our cities, Black families locked out of opportunity for generations. In our rural towns, poor white families left behind by deindustrialization. Different histories, same outcome. And our politicians aren't fixing our challenges, they're multiplying them. The latest round of tariffs from President Trump is one of the largest tax increases on Americans in American history, placed directly on the backs of everyday Ohioans, projected to make Ohio the 7th most impacted state, with working families expected to lose 4% of their already limited disposable income. The backbone of Ohio's economy, our agriculture industry, where 20% of farm incomes come from exports, will be devastated. Childcare. Childcare is both a moral and economic crisis. Infant care costs nearly $13,000 a year, more than a year of public college tuition. And for families in poverty, it can swallow almost 40% of their income. In a state where over a third of families live in childcare deserts, too many parents are forced to choose between earning a paycheck and caring for their child. But that is exactly the choice too many Ohio families face. Housing. Housing has become impossible to afford. Rents have doubled since 2020. while wages have stayed flat. After the 2008 crash, we stopped building. The pandemic stalled construction, and private equity investors bought up homes, jacked up rents, and piled on fees. And with no rent regulation in Ohio, even our most stable neighborhoods are now under siege. Healthcare. Healthcare is under assault. 1 in 4 Ohioans, about 3 million people, are on Medicaid. That's not some fringe group. That's your neighbors, your co-workers, maybe even your own family. The Trump tax bill doesn't just strip health care, it punishes families for being poor, for getting sick. It hurts families who need to be healthy enough to show up for their kids, their jobs, and their communities. And many of these communities will suffer, especially rural hospitals that depend on Medicaid. And cutting coverage will force hospitals to close, leaving entire communities without care and jobs. Public education is being gutted. Instead of fully funding the schools that serve 9 out of 10 kids, billions are being siphoned into private voucher programs with little accountability. High poverty districts in our cities and Appalachian communities stand to lose hundreds of millions of dollars. Money that should be paying for our teachers, for buses, for special education. And while our public schools struggle, lawmakers are handing out tax breaks. Every dollar stripped from our schools is a dollar stolen from Ohio's children and their future. We have an environmental crisis in Ohio. We rank as one of the worst states in our country, and nearly the bottom in air quality, with some of the worst particle pollution in the nation. Hundreds of thousands of homes still depend on toxic lead pipes. Some Ohio families don't even have reliable running water at home. This didn't happen just by accident. It happened because we allowed corporations to pollute for profit. And paying fines is cheaper than fixing the problem. As a Catholic, my faith grounds me. That is why I am deeply alarmed by the rise of Christian nationalism in our country and here in Ohio. Christian nationalism is Christian in name only. Its goal is not faith, but the consolidation of power. It seeks to achieve that power through our churches, our courts, and by buying off our politicians. They use God's name to advance policies rooted in exclusion, in fear, and in hate. And this is extremely prevalent right here in Ohio. The Center for Christian Virtue are pouring millions into lobbying, buying property next to the State House, and writing laws that strip away the rights of women, of marginalized families, of immigrants, and of vulnerable children. It is hate wrapped in a cross and a flag. And unless we resist, unless we call it what it is, we are sleepwalking towards a bureaucracy. When you compound each of these, corruption, greed, and unchecked power are the root cause for why families can't afford a home, why kids stop believing they have a future, why hard work never adds up to security. And what's really being stolen is hope. And that fact is why so many Ohioans feel abandoned and why cynicism runs so deep. And let's be honest, that cynicism has been earned. Our democracy is being eroded from within. Since Citizens United, dark money and super PACs have flooded our elections with negative ads, drowning out the voices of ordinary people. Politicians make decisions that hurt Ohio families, even their own voter base, because there are no consequences. Politicians in power have set up a system where they draw district lines to guarantee whether a seat will be Democratic or Republican. There's very few competitive districts. The same politicians elected year after year. That unchecked power breeds corruption. Leaders stop listening to their communities and start serving only the extremes of their parties. Corporate executives and lobbyists actually have a hand in writing our laws here in Ohio. Corporations have poured millions into our elections to tip the scales in their favor. Politicians have passed bills that make it harder for seniors, women, students, people with disabilities, and working class families to cast a ballot. That's not protecting democracy, that's voter suppression, designed to keep the people in power from ever being challenged. And the system is designed to keep them in power, to discourage you from voting so they can stay in power. If you give up, they win. But we can break the grip of corruption on our politics. We can ban dark money, cap campaign contributions, and end gerrymandering with independent redistricting. We can overturn Citizens United and move toward publicly funded campaigns. We can reform lobbying and PACs, pass strict anti-bribery laws, and close self-funding loopholes. We can make ballot language clear and honest. We can do these things because our democracy should belong to the people. We can empower Ohio's workers again. We can strengthen our unions and guarantee every worker has the right to organize, negotiate, and earn a fair wage. We can raise the minimum wage to $22 an hour. We can invest in manufacturing, infrastructure, and clean energy jobs, wind and solar, that builds the future and protects our environment, not looks backwards. We can prepare workers for tomorrow with job training, apprenticeships, and vocational education in partnership with labor. We can protect small businesses and family farms and ensure health care and retirement security for every working family. We can make corporations and the wealthiest pay their fair share by restoring a real corporate income tax, closing loopholes that let billionaires hide profits, and creating a tax system where working families aren't carrying the load alone. We can do these things. We can make housing affordable again. We can stabilize rents by capping increases for big landlords who own dozens of buildings while protecting small mom and pop landlords. We can stop displacement by banning no-cause evictions and implementing at least 90 days notice before a rent hike. We can build faster and smarter, launch an Ohio Homes Now Fund to expand affordable housing, cut red tape and zoning, and get shovels in the ground. We can help families build equity with down payment assistance and a statewide registry to hold corporate landlords accountable. Because housing isn't just about rent and mortgages, it's the foundation of everything else. We can fix childcare. We can cap childcare expenses at no more than 7% of a family's income, so parents don't go broke just trying to go to work. We expand access to quality providers in every community, and we can stabilize the childcare workforce so teachers and caregivers are paid fairly and families have consistent, reliable care. Because every parent deserves peace of mind, children deserve opportunity, and our economy depends on keeping families in the workforce without sacrificing their futures. We can prioritize and fund education again. We can guarantee universal pre-K. We can guarantee free school meals for every student and expand nutritional programs. We can raise teachers' pay and increase funding for public schools instead of siphoning money into unaccountable charter programs and privatization schemes. We can commit to desegregation and equity across districts so children in poor and rural communities are not left behind. We can do that. We can guarantee health care as a human right. We can pass universal health care that covers everyone. We can put a cap on prescription drug costs, demand real price transparency, and stop pharmaceutical companies from gouging families. We can invest in mental health and addiction treatment. We can defend reproductive rights and access to contraception so that every woman has the right to make decisions about her own body. We can do those things. We can fix the environment crisis here in Ohio by creating good-paying union jobs in clean energy and moving away from fossil fuels. We can adopt statewide clean energy mandates. We can modernize our power grids. We can crack down on industrial pollution and invest in flood prevention. by supporting sustainable agriculture and stronger water protection laws, by expanding energy efficiency programs, public transit, and EV infrastructure. We can do that. It's time to stop sending our tax dollars to subsidize wars and violate human rights. We cannot keep pouring billions into fueling violence abroad while our children go hungry here at home and our communities crumble. Our priorities must change. We can fight for our veterans who fought for us. We can do this by expanding VA health care so every veteran sees a doctor on time, by investing in mental health services, by guaranteeing affordable housing with rental help and home ownership grants, by providing job training and apprenticeships so veterans can thrive in civilian life, and by strengthening, not cutting, state programs. We can do that. We can finally pass real common sense gun reform, universal background checks. We can close loopholes for domestic abusers and felons. We can pass red flag laws and safe storage requirements. We can ban assault-style weapons and high-capacity magazines designed for battlefields, not schools. And we can increase funding for mental health resources, not strip them away. And we can stand shoulder to shoulder with marginalized communities, our LGBTQ Ohioans, immigrants, people of color, women, people with disabilities, because dignity does not belong to the privileged. It belongs to all of us. And that, my friends, is the core of what binds us together. Not our sameness, but our shared conviction that dignity does not belong to those in power, it belongs to the people, where every person in Ohio has a voice, no matter what your last name is. And still we come together, not in spite of our differences, but because of them. They will tell us we are divided. They will try to exhaust us with rage and confuse us with lies and numb us with fear. But we are stronger than their fear. We are bolder than their cruelty. We are greater than their greed. In an age of performative cruelty, we choose radical empathy.